So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another beautiful session of the Hearth Within, which we like to call Guftagu around the Hearth. So, Guftagu, as most of us know, is a very informal uh, format of conversation, communication. It implies warmth, it implies a sense of togetherness, it also implies a sense of community. A community is built around a hearth. It is built via a guftagu. And we hope this kind of chit chat that we try to do over the hearth is something that helps new poetry books open into the world. Because a book is nothing unless it is actually opened. It is nothing unless its words get across to people. And I think poetry, is of all the genres most I would say, disadvantaged in this regard, that although it's capable of floating around, it is capable of, being transferred by word of mouth. It's capable of being imprinted from one memory into another. Yet somehow, it is prose that gets all the popularity, all the circulation. And poetry tends to get left behind, except for a cohort of poets like us who keep reading each other. So I think one beautiful way of making poetry circulate, go around like currency in the world, would be to have more poets reading out their poems, reading each other. And the Guftagu around the hearth is intended to kind of create this bonding, this communion. So thank you very much, Red River, because it is Red River that has made this particular evening possible with the wonderful lot of books that it has brought into the world. Each, if you look at the poster, if you look at the flyer, which is behind me, each cover is so aesthetically designed and I think beautifully named. So welcome Gopika Jadeja, Muhammad Shafiqul Islam, Bhaskar Pitla, Neera Kashyap, Debashish Lahiri, and welcome with your wonderful new books around the hearth. So without much ado, I think I would like to begin with Gopika Jadeja, who has brought forth this beautiful book in the world, where she says what Parvati does not say. I love the title because here is Gopika saying so many things through Parvati, who seems to not say. So this is a book about saying. It's also a book about unsaying. It's a book about what should not be said but has been said, what is continuously being said through the unsaid. So I think there's so many layers in the title itself. And I love the cover where you have a woman's feet, represented. Again, the sari that, kind of drapes this feet. The sari has its own connotations. It's a beautiful, brilliant red. And I think the ground that it stands on is also, a kind of rainy ground. And there's a lot of visual symbolism built into that. So Gopika, welcome with your wonderful book. And we would like to know what Parvati does not say. Over to you.
Thank you. What Parvati does not say is everything that over ages, over time, women have been told not to say. So in many ways, this book is about both learning to say, learning to speak, and also unlearning that which you have been taught to say, so that you can say other things, so that you can bring in newer ideas, newer thoughts. So it is both about speaking and not speaking, as you said. It is both about learning and unlearning. And the title comes from the title poem, which actually has a longer title. It is called On Looking at a Bronze of Shiva and Parvati in Union, and what Parvati does not say. So that particular poem came from my reading of the Kumar Sambhavam. And as I was reading it, there's this passage where Parvati is looking at Shiva, and Parvati is absolutely enamored. She's been watching Shiva for days, and she's asked Kama to hide there, and she wants to be the first person to look upon Shiva for Shiva to look upon who Shiva will look upon when in Kama's presence, so that he will then fall in love with her. So, and at the moment Shiva opens his eyes, instead of looking at Parvati, he burns Kama down. So, love love has left the world. Love is burnt to ashes. And, the questions that this then raises: what happens in a world where love is burnt to ashes? And what is our response then? And what is the meaning of love in a world where you sometimes cannot say the word? So this book is an exploration of all those questions, and it's the work of the past 20 years, really. It's a kind of distillation of my writing of the past 20 years, both as a translator, as a poet, as a scholar. And what I've tried to do with this book is to put my own voice, of course, in conversation with the world around me and with other poets around me. Particularly, I would say, women, the women who've come before me, who are poets like Laldev and Andal, and figures like my own mother, and other women who I've met. So it is about my voice, of course, but it is also in many ways about bringing all these voices together and creating this gathering of voices, and through that gathering of voices, creating the song, and then the song that comes from what Parvati does not say.
Beautiful, I think, Gopika, and I love this idea where you have a chorus in mind, you have a tradition in mind, and these women who are speaking to each other, speaking to your creativity, and that it has generated this lovely book. Thank you, thank you. And I think this is the first round where we go to all the poets and we learn how they have come up. What are the ideas behind their books? This will be followed up by another round of reading. So thank you, Gopika. And from Gopika, I would next like to go over to Muhammad Shafiqul Islam, whose book is titled On the Other Side of Silence. Now, Gopika was talking about what not to say. And this particular book again talks about silence and something that is very significant on the other side. So it has connotations of an afterlife, it has connotations of death, of eternity, but at the same time, it has connotations of silence. In life, the speaking and unspeaking metaphor, I think, which applies to Gopika's book, can as well be applied to the title here. And we have a very serene cover, green and blue cover that depicts both life and I would say afterlife. So Shafiqul Islam, welcome, and over to you to talk about your book.
Yeah, thank you very much. Am I audible? Okay, so good evening to everyone. And in this wonderful poetry evening, I'm speaking from the other side of India on my book, On the Other Side of Silence. So, first of all, thank you, Red River, and for arranging such a wonderful evening. And I'm very much glad to be part of this. So, basically, this is my third collection of poetry. Although I translate from Bangla into English, some of the translations are also appeared. My second collection was published in 2020 from Bangladesh, and it was published by the Daily Star Books. And this one is my third collection, as I have already said. So I have tried to focus on silence from different perspectives. The word has a wide variety of meanings, a great many layers of meanings. So sometimes silence speaks. Sometimes silence speaks louder than voice. And although it depends upon different perspectives, some people take it granted for various kinds of meanings. Say, when something happens in front of us in our reality, in our daily life. Sometimes if you remain silent in this kind of situations, then it is looked at in an oblique way. Uh, but poetry is something deep. Poetry speaks sometimes through silence, through metaphors, giving or extending a wide range of meanings. So uh, basically, in this collection, I have tried to uh, give those meanings a voice. So I have tried to give voice to silence through my words. Say, for example, um, in a world which is so much brutal, every day we encounter various kinds of happenings that really touch us, move us in an intense way. But to express those in words sometimes needs extra, um, terrestrial kind of experience or words or meanings, so which are impossible to gather. So that's why in that situation, uh, silence works. So silence sometimes is synonymous with solitude because something is created, something valuable is created in silence, in solitude. And when we speak using words in our poetry, in our fiction, in other literary genres, so that is visible. But sometimes invisibility also becomes very powerful. Say we write lines of poetry using words, and there is a space between words. So that space is very important. That space in which something is unsaid, something is unexpressed. So to me, something that gets lost in between the words, that signifies more than something is said. So those unsaid things work in my collection on the other side of silence. Sometimes cruelties of um, the world reach such an extent that speaking in favor against them is really impossible. It's because words do not become enough. So words do not become sufficient for expressing the sadness and sorrows and grief. So there is a poem in my collection that is called "The Central Jail of Silence," the very first poem of my collection. So I have tried to give a kind of situation, or I have portrayed the world which is a kind of jail or prison. So that is full of silence. And from that silent space, something is said which becomes meaningful to the world, to the people around us. So from silence, something is created which becomes a voice for the world, which becomes meaningful for the people around us. And also I have written another poem that is grief is a verb. So we know in our real everyday life, kind of mundane kind of life, that grief cannot be expressed in words, but grief function as an act in our life because it really cuts hard. It really hurt us in the most intense way. But that particular grief cannot be revealed the way we want. So that's why silence works behind. So even in our South Asian perspective, sometimes silence works as an activism. So theoretically speaking, silence is also a kind of activism because, as I have already mentioned in the beginning, that silence is very powerful. So I have come up with this title on the other side of silence because there is much to be said, uh, behind the screen or from behind the screen, and even we know, I mean, we are familiar with our environment, with our real life, with our society, with the world we live in, but something else is there on the other side, like in invisible space. Like I want to metaphorically say that kids portrayed a world like um, the Nightingale's land, where he has got some momentary respite. So that respite is actually the respite of silence. So silence is also synonymous with peace, and that happens in solitude. And something outstanding might also be created through silence and in a space of silence. That's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really loved this idea, especially where you talk about exploring silence on the written page, exploring silence through punctuation and the spaces between words. I think that is very creative, and it is also uh, these days when we are doing a lot of spoken poetry, performance poetry. I think placing that silence, at the exact space on the page. Adds layers of meanings to a particular poem. So thank you for that. And we move over to our third poet for the evening, who is Bhaskar Pitla with his collection called Acts of Love. Now, again, a very, very evocative cover and an equally evocative title, because when you put it as acts of love, you kind of place love within a particular frame where it has to answer all questions that you interrogate it with. So we are looking at love perhaps in a political frame. We are looking at love in a socio-cultural frame. We're also looking at love in a philosophical frame. And I think these are poems that are going to explore the various dimensions of love, but let's have it from the poet himself. So Bhaskar, over to you to talk about your lovely book.
Thanks, Vasundhara. And good to see like all the Red River poets and a lot of guests around. So it's a great opportunity to connect to all the poets and, as you said, have a discussion. So talking about the book, basically like Acts of Love, like the first title was not supposed to be Acts of Love. It was Meanings, but, I had some discussion with Divya about this, and it was kind of very bland. So when I look back at the collection of the poems that I had, like which I had written like over 15 years, so a lot of poems, like most of the poems had the same theme of love, you know. So basically, if I had to tell you, it's an out and out, collection about love, romantic poetry, basically. But it does have like a different, connotation, different shades to it. So the basic idea was to have, as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, as to Act 5, 5 acts. So that was the basic idea that stayed. So that's how the title came about, Acts of Love, and the poems were about talking about love. And about the cover is basically like it's actually in my hand, the one of the poem is tattooed on my hand. Uh, so that's the idea behind the cover. And yeah, so basically, if you look at the collection, it moves from the Act 1 to Act 5. So it moves from very romantic kind of love, like, and it kind of becomes more complex and, giving different shades to it. And it becomes, it's kind of from, self, romantic love to self-love. It's like a discovery, it's a journey. So if you look at like each act, there is a quote at the beginning of the each section, Act 1, Act 2. So each quote kind of gives you a flavor of what kind of poems are there inside. So the first one, it starts with a Baudelaire quote, like there's no, I can't, see any kind of beauty, but there is no melancholy in it. And it ends, the last act ends with a Carl Jung quote, those who looks outside dreams, the one who looks inside awakes. So that's the basic idea about the collection.
Thank you. Yes, I went through a couple of poems, and as you say, the romantic love does not remain confined to romantic love, because love has so many dimensions. It takes place in such a fertile space that the poems speak far beyond their context.
And
So
also,
thank you,
like,
Bhaskar.
there are a lot of elements of nature if you look at it,
Yes,
like
yes,
words, yeah.
very beautifully placed. Thank you, and we will listen to you reading from your latest collection. We
Sure.
move over to our fourth poet for the evening, Neera Kashyap, who has a very unusual title where she calls her book The Art of Unboxing. I love the use of the word unboxing, because I think unboxing would be a very recent word, or recently, in currency, because since we have these online delivery orders and we have parcels coming in, and the act of boxing and unboxing, and how sometimes we'll have to make reels and videos of what we unbox. So there's also a kind of, performance in the act of unboxing, while it is also revelation, while it is also, a kind of enlightenment. It is also at the same time a kind of exhibitionism, an act of performance. And there are many layers that one can read into this title that I think is equally reinforced by the cover. That is, again, it would be very difficult to identify what exactly it says, for it does unbox a nest, perhaps, and eggs. So there is a complicated, I would say, relationship that works through the title and the text. And I would love Meera to throw light on what she thinks is the art of unboxing.
Thank you, Vasudhara. Especially thank you for your sensitive analysis of all that we say. And perhaps it's, it makes sense, and it makes sense to you especially. And thank you for that. Now, this book actually is an exploration through a decade. And all the poems have been slowly published over these years, which gave me the confidence to gun for a collection. And so when I approached Red River, with many books I'd already read, especially yours and Dibya Jyoti's and Shekhar Banerjee and whoever, Geeta Ravichandran. So I'd read a lot of, and I'd actually been quite delighted by the way they are visualized, designed, and sensitively sort of presented to the audience. So I wrote to him, and he said, you will have to wait for about 9 months. So the wait was long, from August to January, but it was not January. It was in March that we actually got started. And it was after I received the edits from Semin Ali that I realized how much work was still required on the manuscript. And her edits actually gave me the hope that this book may just be okay, And of course, Dibya's visualization, which was really an act of love and dedication. By the way, the cover is by Fidelia Bridges. She's an American painter, and I think it was taken because it's a free thing available on the net, but it was taken after some debate. I'll just quickly read about the book because I thought it was easier, because the book has many elements. So if you can give me two minutes, I'll just read about the book. The book explores how humans are deeply connected to nature, which allows for both survival and detachment. Now, in the poem Letting Go, we see how even when starved of nutrients, the brilliant red autumn leaf wafts to the earth to add to the earth's nutrients. We also see how the past continues to shape the present through memory, symbols, and history. There's always the possibility of learning from the past, depending on how we perceive it. For in the poem Past is Present, the past returns to tell us about ourselves as curse or charm based on how we choose. At times, we are forced to confront our true selves beyond masks and escapes. And these escapes can be fantasy, they can be despondency as an escape, they can be visualization so that we escape. And personal reflections reveal emotions such as grief, longing, rivalry, mortality, suppressed feelings that must be faced as they emerge. There's also, very importantly for me, a sage's call for purification and the ego's dissolution. And the poems move from personal experience to broader reflections on women's historical subjugation. As Gopika mentioned, that there is a lot of womanhood that we still deal with as women. And we At some level, we draw our strength from understanding goddesses like Parvati, Kali, and Devi, who embody resilience and transformation and feminine energy. For example, if I take the poem Cessation that is in the book, Kali is all shock and destruction, but she may be showing us the way out of all shocks and out of a shackled destiny. And that is why, as Gopika said, that Parvati actually emerges as more than, she emerges as a spiritual person giving us strength and the capacity to move through life. And themes of peace, transcendence, and a search for higher consciousness run through the work, culminating in love and light as liberating forces. For example, in the poem Flight of Freedom, the poem asks, is the heart the hollow of a tree where the rain of love both soaks and shelters? Is it our love that radiates to others? And the collection closes with Haiban, which is based on personal experience and juxtaposes poetic prose with haiku. And the juxtaposition is really intended to give a different dimension to the whole experience. And interestingly, all the themes that I had written in a very sort of routine way, things like hope and gods in our lives and the personal quest for peace, have been renamed by Divya Jyoti by taking short lines from the poems themselves and renaming them. So this segment is called Silent Frame. And Shafiq will probably approve of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Neera. I remember reading your poems in RIC journal, and those would be usually RIC specializes in publishing short pieces, and they would be very short and very distilled. And I'm glad that you have this collection out so that we can all, read what we have missed in these years. So thank you very much. And from Neera, we move over to Debashish Lahiri, who has a very interesting title for his latest collection, and he calls it A Certain Penance of Light. The title, I believe, speaks very powerfully to our times where we talk of light, but what kind of light is this? I think light deserves some kind of interrogation today. It's become a very common term. It's also become a very flashy term. And yet I think its significance, somewhere the word is losing its essential significance, its essential, I would say, philosophical role. And that perhaps is the penance or the reason that light needs to be penitent. What exactly, Debashish, have you been trying to say in the book? Over to you for your views.
Thank you, Sudhara. Thank you to all my fellow Red River poets. I see some familiar faces, of course. Hi, Nida. And Divya Jyoti, who obviously always stays in the background. So I know you can hear me, Divya. So the problem, because it involves Divya, because I found that this was a kind of becoming a rather a theme for the evening. Each one of us, when we were discussing our books, we were talking about the role that Divya so significantly played in the final creative process of bringing it to fruition. So, with Divya's permission, I'll just narrate one very small story, because the cover itself is a story. So there are several stories inside, but the cover itself is a story. And about penance, I've been asked that many times already. Why penance? You see, what I basically mean is that seeing comes with a responsibility. Even an innocuous, harmless act of seeing. You see anything, any reality, you just look out of your window, whatever you see, it entails a certain responsibility on whoever is seeing. And the attendant responsibility is to probably, if I think it has moved me, struck me, shocked me, absolutely amazed me, then it is attendant upon me to somehow bring it to the notice of someone else. Perhaps someone I love, friend, whoever. So that is the primary act, that no seeing goes without responsibility. And the responsibility of expressing my excitement, my joys, my sorrows, whatever connections. Memory plays a huge part in what we see, because it's a trickster. Memory is a trickster, I think. It makes us see certain things. And therefore, I really believe there is nothing called total recall. There's nothing called recall, because everything that is recalled has already been touched by memory. It's like, the Photoshop man sitting there and editing each and every mental frame or photograph that I have inside me, so that I seem to be recalling exactly one of those events from my past. And yet later I frown on myself and I said, did I say something that didn't happen at that time, did it? It happened maybe a year or two later. So somehow in my mind, those two events have already been conflated. A different picture has already emerged, and I have even aired that in public. It takes me a while for myself to realize what has already happened. So again, it is such voluntary or involuntary acts that preface or take off from seeing. That's exactly my point about penance, because it is a penance. It is something that is due, I think. So that's why the penance. Of course, if you read the introduction, which again, as I said, Dibya made me write, actually, because I was not in favor of writing a longish introduction. So he said that, and we were just discussing, as we often do, certain memories, certain facts just came to me, and I just said, do you know that? And he said that you need to write this down. I think that the book will actually be very well kind of made sense of if you add this essay of yours, a prefatory essay of yours to it. So I basically wrote that essay, which is a little bit of a trip down memory lane, as you will see, as you may have already read, I think. It is about someone in my family who's gone in the past, and one of the early reviews mentions that is my penance in memory of one such person who was also someone who was a seer, in the sense of being a painter, being a writer, being someone who was enamored of the arts and was an active partaker and a practitioner, perhaps. So maybe, I don't know, as you know, books are open to interpretation, but these poems were not written basically with a book in mind, you might say. They're written over time, and later, much later, bring them together. And the preface also helped in kind of making sense of the entire corpus of poems. And my preoccupation, someone says, with because as you know, one of my earlier books with Red River, which was Tether That Light. So one of my colleagues at my college here in Calcutta, he said that enough of light, that's enough. Okay, so the next book has no light. I said, well, okay, it'll only be darkness. I promise, only darkness next time. So again, as I said, so something that compels, something which memory turns around. It's such a common expression in English, isn't it? Oh, I see. What do I see? What do I mean by what I see? Because that itself is a phrase about which you can write volumes, I think, and it's so complicated what that means exactly. And the my word penance in the title is basically to do with that, the responsibilities of seeing and of bringing that seeing to another person. So it's also secondary sight, not just what you've seen, but also to somehow convey it to another person, so that he or she sees with you, or maybe not the same reality, but at least something close. So bringing it to that person with the excitement, of course, and with the emotions attached to it. So that was perhaps my general idea. Back to you, Vasudha.
Thank you. And that makes a lot of sense, particularly when you talk about the memory part and how you say that every memory, There's an active act of interpretation also working behind it. So every memory is a kind of interpretation, and the original vanishes somewhere unless, of course, you are very, very keen to capture it in words at that time. And I think that probably even when I think in editing drafts of our poems, I think the same thing happens. I will often work very hard on editing a particular draft and have 2 or 3 versions. And then when I let it lie for a few months, I'll again come back to the first one and say, this is more authentic. And probably there's something wrong with all those edits. So there is something, the intrinsic fresh capturing that perhaps helps, that aids, and that also communicates this responsibility that you say, the act of seeing and the responsibility of passing it on or showing it to someone else the same way that you have seen it. Very beautifully put. We are all ready for our second round of reading, where we ask the poets to read from their collections. And I think there's something about this act of reading that is very important, because I'm in academics and we are continuously reading other writers. And I don't know whether the writers would be, they would like to be read in the way that we are reading them. So somewhere in all this postmodernism and the death of the author and the birth of the reader and all the close reading, we do leave behind the writer. And I think it is important for the voices of poets that way to assert themselves, to assert their right to read their work in the way that they choose it. There's no original reading, of course. We do not have an original or a first reading or the reading, but definitely the poet's reading of the poem helps us in the act of interpretation. Often it's also an affair with words that comes out very beautifully, when sounds and silences play with each other. So with all these ideas, I'm very happy that you all consented to be here and to read from your latest work. Gopika, I would like to invite you to read, and you can read as many poems as you want, but I hope that you also, read Maybe Fires Was Wrong. That is a poem that I would like to hear in your voice. Over to you, Gopika.
Thank you, Vasudhara. Thank you so much for building this conversation in the way that you've built it. There's such a warmth to it, and there's such an intimate sharing of ideas and why we write, what we write, and why we read as well. So thank you so much for creating this space. And at the same time, in the same breath, thank you to Divya for creating this space for this conversation to happen. Without you, Divya, this would not be possible. I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to read from a translation. This particular collection of mine contains both some of my translations as well as my own poems. And that's really awkward phrasing because there's no other way to put it. I don't really think of the translations as I do as very different in practice from my own poetry. And again, I feel very awkward saying my own there. So the first poem I'll read is called Panjuri. And Panjuri is the prasad, the offering that is given during the celebration of Janmashtami. So this particular poem is about Janmashtami and the day that Krishna is born. And the day that Krishna is born is also the day that Yashoda's daughter, Yogmaya, dies. So we remember and we celebrate the birth, but very rarely do we remember the little girl who, we are not told in the story that she dies, but who before she is dashed against the wall, disappears. So this is remembering Yogmaya on Janmashtami that just went by. Panjuri. Little black sparrows play at my shoulder. My tongue is drenched with the taste of Panjuri. The noise of the Aarti is ear-splitting. In a few moments, he will be born. He is Krishna. Only 3 minutes short. Again, Yashoda's daughter will slip out of Kamsa's hands. And again, the divine voice will pronounce, your death has been born. Thank you. We were speaking about light, and we were speaking about looking at things differently. So I'm going to read a very young poem. I wrote this when I was in my very early 20s. And it is still a poem that I keep going back to. And it's also a poem that my mother likes very much. And this is one poem that she'll ask me to read again and again. So this is, women are always standing at windows. He's taking a picture of her standing by the window, or maybe painting her, back turned, gazing wistfully outwards. Perfect. The light, of course, falls just so. Wonder how it would change. The light, I mean, if she were to suddenly turn around and walk out. I'd like to read, Geeta has a hand up. Geeta, is there something you wanted to say?
Yes,
Sorry,
Geeta,
that was a mistake. Sorry. Sorry.
we would love to have you say something, later, maybe. Yes.
All right. So I will definitely read, maybe Fez was wrong, but before that, I think I'd like to read this poem called Cranes in Persian or Urdu. I spoke about translation earlier, and translation has been a very integral part of my practice. And with translation, the question of language, which are the languages that we have been able to learn, which are the languages that we haven't been able to learn, that we haven't been taught, and which are the languages that make home in our language. Because when you think about Gujarati, we have so many loan words from Persian and Arabic. And where I grew up in Kathiawar, our Gujarati is very Persian Arabic inflected. And my grandfather used to know Persian. And my mother always, she said, she always regretted that she never learned it from him. So there's a poem that I'm going to mention here, which is not a Persian poem, but an Urdu poem. And it is about cranes, the saras, a flock of saras that is returning home after it's migrating, and the hunter shoots the bird and it falls to ground. And then what happens after that? So that's a poem that I mentioned. It's a long poem, and it was translated by my grandfather, who I mentioned here. So cranes in Persian or Urdu. I'm not going to read the very long epigraph, but it is basically about how cranes, when they migrate, will allow for leadership that changes. So it will be they will take turns for the crane that is leading to navigate them all. So cranes in Persian or Urdu. When you imagined them, the cranes did not make their whoops in a tongue I know, neither the Persian nor the Urdu. My tongue mimics from the sonic shapes of Devanagari the troughs and crests of a script that flows like water, a language I have lost. I never heard it from you, but always in your voice when mother recited it, my first lesson in exile and loss, the poem about migratory cranes returning home. Your cadence punctuated the sound of the arrow that found the wing of the saras, its fall, slow motion to earth. A first lesson in violence, the lines describing the hunter and the hunted, The smell of blood and love as the saros fell, its mate hovering above, crying, exile, no possibility of a return home. The flock paused mid-flight, home written on wings. The air aflutter before the rush of wings fleeing arrows. Like you, I borrow words, make them speak in a different tongue. Yet I cannot translate into words the wounds and the wounded. Maybe it needs no translation. In your voice, my mother reciting through her tears, I see that you knew the wound is the place the light enters you. And, when someone asks me, who this is, I say, could be me, could be Rumi, could be Leonard Cohen. The wound is the place the light enters you. I'll read one last one. Vasudha, I will read, maybe Fez was wrong. So this particular poem has an epigraph from Audre Lorde, and this is a poem that I keep going back to again and again. It's a poem that's very close to my heart. Maybe Fez was wrong. And Audre Lorde's words in the epigraph. But I, who am bound to my mirror as well as my bed, see causes and color as well as sex, and sit there wondering which me will survive all these liberations. You hold tighter in your not holding. You quote Fez. Mujhse pehli si mohabbat meri mehboob ne maang. Do not ask me for that love again, my beloved. Torn between causes, I do not see there was no again. That lust, love, lust was never yours. Mind touched, mind fucked in the X-rayed uranium showered landscape of our nation of the mind. My body was never beautiful to your touch. In our country of cracked feet, breasts lose their song. Mind fucked, mind touched, still looking for their lost sounds. I say to you, maybe Fez was wrong. Maybe my fingers stung skin on yours, on mine, could touch this barren nation to life. I hear you in Farida Khanum's breath. Teri सूरत से है आलम में बहारों को सबात. तेरी आंखों के सिवा दुनिया में रखा क्या है? The beauty of your face turned the season to eternal spring. All else is vain, your eyes encompass the world. And I know it was never about the beauty of my face or the depth of my eyes. I say Fez, but you were wrong. Maybe I can still unfuck myself, slip out of my skin, teach myself to touch, be touched again, to call this nation of ours to love and life.
Thank you for reading this, Gopika, but you can't end just yet because Elvin has made a request. He would like you to read the title poem of the collection.
And I will
honor this request and end on that note.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that request. It is, it actually, I love reading these two together. So thank you. On looking at a bronze of Shiva and Parvati in union, or what Parvati does not say. And the epigraph is from Kalidasa's Kumar Sambhavam in the translation of Hans Heifetz. Then Parvati, seeing her hopes broken to pieces as Shiva burned Kama down while she watched, cursed her own beautiful body in her heart, since beauty should carry a lover to success. You adorn my hair with parijat on your breath, the smell of all the men who have stroked this hair on your breath, the smell of the light in my navel. I turn to you, lift my face to yours, And you need all the mythical strength that held the heaven-fleeing Ganga in your dreadlocks to lift me to your thigh, unseared by my eyes. Or the verse does not say, you wait for me to encircle your thighs, the dreaded weight of he who is Lord of the cremation grounds, my hands entwined in yours, my hands around your poison blue neck. I hear Ravana roar in my moan, pure sound. It is my foot crushes Kailash back to earth as your mouth forms its syllables. You sing creation, make 1,000 fingers, raindrop light, raindrop sharp, raindrop hard, dance the afternoon light into glass, shattering over the world. I bite your lip, unravel your tongue, probe your navel, weightless dancing, your feet destroy the 3 cities, my nails mark you, the root of your thigh heaving, leaving you touched, lust scorched, night cracking into day, not just your jata, your dew moistened, raindrop fed, river rushing world will be undone if I do not so much as lift a finger in an air-etched gesture. I unmake your world. It is my pleasure, Lord of the universe, you wait upon. Thank you.
Very beautiful, very precious reading, Gopika. And thank you, Alvin. Otherwise, we would have missed that lovely poems. Thank you for suggesting that you read it. Thank you, Gopika. And I would next like to invite Shafiqul Islam to read his poems from the other side of silence. And Shafiq, I also hope that along with the other poems that you plan to read, may you also read, Love at Second Sight. I loved the title so much. So over to you for your reading.
Thank you so much. I was absorbed in listening to Gopika's poetry reading, so that was really wonderful. And I could really resonate with one point, that is translation. I myself translate because it is in no way less important and less rigorous than writing originally. So I really could resonate with that. So thank you so much for reading so wonderfully. So, yeah, I'll read in a few poems. So I want to start with a very small one. That is, grief is a verb. I say, grief is a preposition, making a bond between you and me. The other name of grief is love, flaring up from a vortex of tears. You say grief is a conjunction, seeming 2 clauses of separation. The other name of grief is sky, limitless like a liquid truth. They say grief is a noun, like soft rain dripping through fog. The other name of grief is river, flowing forward to break and build. We say grief is a verb, playing with toys through all tenses. Next poem is also a very small one. It is basically about a particular city, which is a metropolitan city, and more specifically, it refers to our Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh. So I started with an epigraph from one of our leading poets, Kaiser Haq. So it's from his collection, new collection. So that the line is new. Now imagine the dread of a writer from Dhaka. So the title is A City of Cynics. I have walked miles along the alleys of this city, teeming in birds with frayed feathers, fanning quiet foliage amidst anxiety and fear, intruding into our inner garden. Nothing lasts longer than how we perceive things around us, for we do not look beyond zones where we calculate our comfort, always keeping tallies of loss and gain. Rain-soaked sidewalks bordered by trees feast the eyes and fill the mind of a number of Rembla, but we dream of mossy grounds, vast swamps, where wind diffuses love and bliss. In the city of songs, ruckus howls, viruses rants, tapping you to recall murmurs of sounds. In a city of the chosen horse, charlatans know the art of deceiving you and me. Misrule and vice screech from wares and veins, making the populace stare at point. That's basically about the city of Dhaka. This is replete with lots of problems and lots of beauties as well. But I have focused something different. So now it's a found poem. Basically, it is inspired by one of my um, favorite poets, T.S. Eliot, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So I have titled it Prufrock in the 21st Century. So I myself teach poetry in my university. So I also teach the Westland and other poems. So it's basically a found poem, a genre, subgenre. So the title is Prufrock in the 21st Century. In a setup of 60 students studying English literature at a university in the global south, you are a professor of poetry. In one fine morning of a summer semester, as you step into the classroom to teach a love song, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, you discover some blank faces but curious eyes. As the class begins, you notice extra keenness. Girls gaze at you as if you are Prufrock. Boys are now more alert, resonating their mental state and personal experience with Prufrock's feature and how he pursues life. Some steal a glance at you to see if you have gone bald. The professor of poetry has lost some hair. Some boys turn indifferent, remembering the fear to propose their dream damsel, the failure to walk hand in hand with the young lady along the love lane at Premnagar, the city of love. At some point, stream of consciousness hangs on them. Their minds move back and forth, flying up and down. They begin to visualize Prufrock's thin arms, hairless head, loose trousers folded up, and how he wanks. You ask if mermaids will sing for them in the rain on a holiday. They smile back. A post-colonial poetry professor teaching T.S. Eliot in a 21st century English literature classroom ends the poem on Prufrock with some transformed faces, as if pinned to the wall, wriggling for rhythm to be quiet in a closed room. The faces that mull over how one measures life with coffee spoons. The faces that look up schizophrenia, googling a virtual dictionary. Yes. Thank you. So, as you have said, I should also read the poem Love at Second Sight. So, I will end my reading with the first poem, The Central Jail of Silence, but before that, I want to read that one. So, please give me some time to find it. So, I couldn't select it in the beginning because I didn't know that I'll be asked to read that. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Yeah. So, Love at Second Sight. A dream is a mystery, sometimes unfolded amidst creeping eeriness, unstipulated to the seemingly composed mentis. As long as my stint in your thought bears a meaning for life, because I wish to worship the sanctity of your feeling for me and tree. Clouds wait for a breeze, and soft rain soaks a pursed soul and dry land, scattering the smell of sopping mud. Lava doesn't count on you, on me, when it needs to flare up, but the sky is safe from wrath and damage. Looking at a twinkling star, you may have a different perspective as you reckon differently. But even a second sight of a child makes them imagine a winged horse on which they travel faster to sky and catch the lambent light of the star. At the end of a rough day, when evening descends in high spirits, a second chance captivates you. A pull towards a second soul appeals a traveler, an eternal traveler, rambling alone for months and years, along creepy streets, through dark woods. That's it. So I will read my last poem. Just before that, I want to read one short poem that is basically inspired by a line by Homike Baba. So I was reading one of his essays. One line just caught my attention, that is, even the dead have human rights. So inspired by that, I wrote this poem titling Human Rights of the Dead. Life is a past tense, and you are in the present. Death appears a future tense. Yet, isn't it present continuous? When you walk by a grave, what do you hear? Do you hear anything? Or pause to ponder over life and death? Don't you recall, even the dead have human rights? Have you ever climbed into a grave and touched the floor? Is the grave soil different? Grave digging is also a profession. Imagine a dead body being lowered to a grave. What happens? Does the corpse smile back to you? In life, he sought peace and justice. Now, don't you think you can be more compassionate? Even the dead have human rights. So I will read the last poem. It's a bit long, but bear with me. So that's the last reading. So the central jail of silence. So I have started with a quote by Anna Snin. So I'm aware of being in a beautiful prison from which I can only escape by writing. So that is what I intensely resonate with in my personal life as well as in my writing career. So the central jail of silence. Mathematics is the mother of science, but numbers are brutal, especially when you count dead bodies. I'm speaking from the central jail of silence, where you sometimes see me through the porous wall sentinels guard heart. When you see words suffer from aphasia, images embody deformities, and music produce cacophonies, you seek a home that bears witness to your existence and brings grace to life. That's your land, the air castle, the natural world of silence. Artists committing crimes through words or images or voice become jailbirds, but poets are permanent prisoners, preferring the central jail of silence, where you can weave your sorrows with threads of solitariness, making a garden of surreal flowers. In the land of love and loss, skeletons speak and lead and aspire to guide you toward a kingdom of dark shadows. You don't pretend, as you know, how they set fire on trains of thought, on the asylum of ontologies in the library of longings. You explore an archive of silence. In the land of profit and loss, you bargain for luxury. But at the end of rat race, in the end of all playoffs, you long for a land where you measure your memories with the scale of quiescence. At sunset, time transports you to the Arcadia of silence. You are forced to fear invisible guns. You are robbed of your imagination. You are abducted at gunpoint. The sun lodges 7 missing cases. The Kafkaesque cases such as the disappearance of the rainbow. Poets and artists spend years in jail, the central jail of silence. You don't know why nameless nouns chase you in your dream. When you are awake or half awake, at daylight or midnight, you let yourself talk to the dead, who hate the half-dead or the living dead. In the time of global competition of killing and gas enterprises of fetiscides or concerts of gang rapes, healthy deaths are more meaningful and more magnificent, or a voluntary incarceration in a dungeon of silence more appealing. From your proud planet, the airless hospital, doubtless the central jail of silence, I witness headless humans aimlessly meandering along alleys and hear soundless songs composed of wordless lyrics. In this state of implosion, I fight silence with colorless words of silence. The world is full of florets and words. Is the ardor of arts then an illusion? Quietly comes calmness to a chaotic cosmos. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shafiq. Very powerful poems. And I loved the poem, particularly on Proof Rock and how you capture the nuances of teaching and reception, also the shift in context and how they are working in a very, very conjoined manner in the poem. Thank you. Very, very innovative. And from Shafiq, I would next invite Bhaskar to read poems from his Acts of Love. He has them organized into 5 different acts. And Bhaskar, if you you might include in your reading, it's just a request, the poem that is titled The Spirit of a Poet Inside a Poem. That's on page 98. So if you could include that also in your reading, that would be lovely. So over to you.
Sure. That's a poem which, I have not discussed it much or not read it much. So that would be nice to read out here. Also, it was lovely listening to Gopika's poems and Shafiqul's poems. Different flavors, but beautiful. Okay. So the first poem I would like to read would be like from the first section, Act 1. It's called Submerge. Memory fades in the waters of Kanyakumari. Remember when we met? Following the North Star, we reached the southern tip, perched precariously like the sun, balancing on the horizon. Slowly, slowly, slowly. We caught the thermals of the windmills, they say, that take you places where you want to be. Nothing stays the same in these worlds of the sea. Our only hope is our skin. Every pore, the color of dusk, gleaming effervescent with every breath, as the supple waters soothe our souls, and winter flakes the greenest trees. Yeah, so that was the first one. The next poem I'd like to read would be just one sec. So this one is called Meanings. This was supposed to be the title of the book, but it got changed. So this one called Meanings. The raw scent of your body subdues the perfume that you wear. What clings to my skin are the silences between. The words evaporate. This body holds clues to sensations that make no sense. In your bosom, I find a release from penitence. I catnap through our hours. Each seems like a second. We keep moving in concentric circles, trying to coincide every hour. Outside, the seasons change. The day trickles into the night blankets the day, repetitions blur, inside us, meanings change. So this poem is more like about how love brings about a change in us and how we are changing as a person through our life. So you can look at it in different ways. Uh, Other poem I'd like to read is this one's called Why Continents Collide. This is more of a lot of geography in there. Like I was today reading about the Himalayas, how they were formed, and they were so young. They are so young mountains, like how the uh, two continents collided and how the Himalayas came about. So this is a different take on that, but yeah. Our bodies are two continents severed by time, moving slowly towards each other. The oceans between us sinking, the trenches getting deeper. The landscape of our skin shudders with this approaching. Mountains forge and veins converge, like rivers charting a new course. A current runs through the rough, churning out relics, insignias of distinction blur. Even a catastrophe is beautiful. It will be long after dusk and dawn have cast their uneven lights. A new continent forms. A million years, perhaps, to discern how we fit into a jigsaw of longing. So this one. So I would like to read another short poem, and I think then we can go on to the spirit poem. So, so this one actually is the poem which is there on my hand on the cover. It's called A Lesson in Brevity, and I was like reading a lot of uh, Chinese poetry when I wrote this poem. So it's kind of comes about from there. So a lot of times when you're reading something and it kind of stirs us to write something. So this is one of those. Flowers trap, it's called A Lesson in Brevity. Flowers trap bees. Bees trap nectar. Nectar traps honey. Honey traps sunlight. Sunlight traps seasons. Seasons trap flowers. Each inside each, like our ears trapped inside tree trunks. Layer upon layer, breath upon breath. The last one is, yeah. So this is also actually, I was reading an article by C.S. Lewis. So that's when he was talking about poets and how all the poets are connected in some way, universal way. The spirit of the poem inside a poet. They who fail to understand what lies inside a poem, this magic wand, this silent ripening, this ampersand, this motive living in our mind, this sickening intensity, a secret scent they can never smell. What keeps us waking up these mythic dreams, more real than this real world, like the lashing of the jagged tides at the mercy of the hollowed moon, gently, gently calling us, though we might be gone too soon. Is the only place beauty hides. They may never know what blessings lay inside the cursed poet's mind by just standing at the shore. That's done.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Very beautiful, tender
Thank
poems
you.
and very beautifully read. Thank you. And I would now like to invite Neera Kashyap to read from The Art of Unboxing. And there's a particular title there, Neera, that I'm rather fond of, which says Gold is Gold. So I would like you to include that too when you read, if you can, that is. So over to you for your reading.
Thank you, Bhaswara, and thank you for all the earlier poets. I really enjoyed it, and especially the intensity of the poems. I'm going to actually club some poems into themes so that a theme may sort of deepen as one reads the poems. The background to a continuum is really that we've lived in the hills in the Kumaon region for several seasons over many years. So that kind of leaves an impact on the mind, on the heart. So this poem is about the beauty of a sunrise. Quite prosaic, but at the same time quite beautiful. The sunrise, not the poem. A continuum. The dawn in the mountains begins as a glowing pinpoint in the dark. Pink, like a freshly shaved crayon, slowly smearing light, turning dark to pink gold to gold. Unveiling charcoal from the hills to burnish the tallest snow peak, a flaming gold. The sight stays with me all day, a secret charm in my pocket. I often take it out, turn it in my hands, watch as darkness gives way again. Pink, pink gold, gold and flame, till my hands tremble at its power to provide solace. This is another one on the hills, and this kind of contrasts what happens when you're in the hills for a long while and then you come back to the urban areas and you have a sort of comparison, and you don't want to make it an ugly comparison, so you bring in the better points of nature in the urban areas as well. It's called a secret shared. Living in the hills, I feel the force of nature, its duality. The long walks through sunsets, the early risings with the sun, slopes of wildflowers, level and precipitous, a peeping gazania in my garden, a blackbird gazing at the sky, pumpkin, red chilies, gumming, drying on terraces. Thrift, a village woman scrambles down my garden slope, cuts an unwieldy hedge, separates leaves from twigs for fodder and for warmth, hoists a headload home. In her ragged sweater, she glances up at the hill deity, her snow-capped mother, Nanda Devi. Her silent communion with the sacred reaches me. A storm communicates. I listen to its tumultuous rhythms, its rage. I speak to it and tell it I am afraid. It speaks to me and tells me we are one. Power outages follow, roadblocks. No movement, no journeys for days, till rocks and trees are cleared. Storms are spent, but not sunrises or sunsets, nor the vividness of the everyday, the tattoo of a woodpecker, a log being sliced, the springing up of a healing herb, an orange poppy, a rainbow. In the city, I carry back this love for wild harmony. I watch a robin hop across my lawn, pigeons at the feeder, a kite hold still on a treetop in the park. A garden grows geometric around a ruin. This is my cultivated face. I smile. Sometimes we get a sort of intimations from another kind of reality. And if we pay attention, we can see that they're telling something to us. So this section or this theme is on intimations. And this intimation is from the moon. And it's actually, it comes from a train as the poet is going on a train journey. It's called moon magic. Rapid clacking of train wheels, occasional lights in the distance, blink uncertainly. Clouds part before a moon, full with certainty. As if some cosmic force was at work. Specks of moonlight glimmer through the foliage of a dense tree. In an open space, its light shines in fullness. Behind closed eyelids, a luster in formless space. Each eye an inch across, closed, screens a vast void devoid of moon. Just a flash. The rapid clacking of wheels, the throb of shifting rail tracks return. Do you know where gold is? It's on page 51. Okay. I'll just take one poem more on this theme of intimations, and it's actually when I go to my ashram, I can feel the presence of my master, even though it is now more than 70 years since he passed. So this poem is called Presence. Has anyone fed the peacock yet? The sage had asked, breathing his last. A peacock had landed on the tiled roof with restless rattle and clatter to devotees' ravaged chants of Arunachal Shiva. Over 70 years later, peacocks still land on the temple gopuram, on the roofs of the shrine, the meditation hall, the cottages, strutting past like Sarva Adhikaris on inspection. This is home. He made them at home. Peacocks, cows, monkeys, squirrels, dogs, all fed from his hand, understood his words, heeded his chides, reveled in his touch. Dogs sprawl on cool floors, listening to chants, eyes drooping before his lamplit photo in blissful doze. I follow a peacock through a shady grove of interlocked trees. It turns around, fans out its tail in iridescent shimmer, 1,000 green-blue eyes, 1,000 unloaned lives, 1,000 seething energies. Abruptly, the fan is gone. The tail flails, straightens. The bird leads me, sure-footed, to the hall with a lamplit photo. I'll read the last one on Vasudhara's request, which is called Gold is Gold. And this unusually, it came from the National Museum, where we learned that 829 coins were found buried in the sands of the Raja of Bharatpur's estate. And he wore them on his jacket, on his waistcoat. And an archaeologist sensed that these were old coins, and he asked to see them. And when he looked at them carefully, examined them, he found they belonged to the Gupta era. So they were put in the museum and they're in the National Museum now. So these are coins from the Gupta era. So there's a reference to this. Gold is gold. Gold buttons in his coat, the Maharaja wore them with elan. A god on one side, a reigning king on the other. Sanskrit written in Brahmi script extol kings, replacing Greek and Iranian scripts and gods in the strident supremacy of solid gold. And an archaeologist recognized them as coins of the Gupta kings, a golden age 15 centuries past. The Maharaja confessed he found them in a vase. 1821 coins in spouted copper buried in the sands. Treasures of antiquity, taken, displayed in a museum, housed in glass cases under powerful lights, reminding visitors that gold cannot be hidden, not usurped, nor worn with elan. Gold is gold, no matter what its caste. Thank you.
Thank you, Neera. Thank you very much for that very gentle selection of poems. And I think it was lovely to have you conclude with Gold is Gold. I would next like to invite Debashish to read his beautiful poems. And among the poems that he chooses to read, I also hope that he reads about the giraffe. So Debashish, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vasudhara. And I've just been mesmerized listening to all my fellow Red River poets. I mean, each one is a journey in itself, so different. I mean, it's testament to the variety of poetry, to the sheer depth and variety of poetry and the poets, many of whom you don't get to know ultimately, but who are creating such beautiful work across the world, not just in our country, but across the world. So it's just a little reminder to me of all the creativity, the power of the creativity around me, around all of us. So without further ado, I'll begin my reading with a poem which bears very heavily on the introduction that I've written, actually, which mentions the fact that possibly there was this family heirloom, and which happened to be none other than a painting by Raja Ravi Verma in the family. And if you read the introduction, you kind of get to know the sorry state of affairs surrounding that painting, and how, I mean, we are so unmindful of preservation of great works of art. Sometimes, they're like family heirlooms, many such things. I mean, we utterly neglect it, and that's the story of that neglect. And so therefore, kind of, almost, to set the record right, I thought that perhaps a poem was in order. This poem arrived. So this is called Shantanu and Ganga, and it's based on that very famous Raja Ravi Verma painting. The painting actually shows Ganga leaving with the last child, of course, Bhishma, as it turns out. And there's this faraway figure, kind of in the background of the running king, Shantanu, who's gesturing and perhaps waving, asking, requesting, pleading Ganga not to leave or not to kill the child. So it's about dusk, as you can make out from the color of the sky, the painting. So let's see what I've made of the poem. Let's see. Light, even on a summer's evening, is too great an adversary in a foot race to the river. It's as though afternoon had given light a sleeping potion. Light staggered, already half in slumber, to the west and the river to find ripples. To outrun light, bent on falling dark before falling into sleep, was a task even gods would find despairing. And what of me, a washerman's son, with no mother to grow up around. Told as a child that my mother was a river. At play all the hot afternoon, I had forgotten my washing chores. My old father cannot bend so long over the clothes anymore. I'm trying to make amends. Halfway through my washing, I saw a baby crying, its little arms agitated by the river's edge. The light stood like mother by its side, watching with infinite love and pain, its frantic pleas for love, as though they would be its last. I was aghast. I felt like one of my father's stories about my mother. The clouds that had lately been so full of the sun to be almost invisible now grew dark and pale all at once in the southwest. On the long ribs of loamy grass, someone, a rich man, was it a king, was running behind the light, repeating my folly. Half-washed clothes lay in a pile around me as the rich man howled and knelt before the light, was running into water again. He tried, picked the baby up, but his arms only carved circles in the sweat of the sky. And then an east wind blew out the sunlight. The child and its mother were spared by a sigh from the east. River noise ceased. I could not make out the rich man, even in his cloth of gold and tiara of gems. It had grown too dark, and the clothes in a pile around me had grown dark too. Father would be mad at my story, for my mother was a river too. Thank you. Second one I chose to read, this is a book of ekphrastic poetry written around photographs and paintings entirely. I chose to give this reading a very Indian air, if I could possibly do that. So I chose the paintings and the poems accordingly, kind of. The second painting is by another very well-known painter, a contemporary painter, Sudhir Patwardhan, whose work is incidentally being used a lot in book illustrations, by poets who are trying to write in the ekphrastic mode, which is very good indeed, is excellent indeed. A worthy kind of comprador and part successor of Jeev Patel, of course, the multi-talented writer and artist, as we all know. We just passed his anniversary, anniversary of Jeev's birth. So this poem is called A Window, and this was written actually quite a long time ago, in the COVID year, the year of years, Janus Horribilis, whatever you choose to call it, 2020. So this is called A Window, and it's based on a painting by Sudhir Patwardhan. Viscous, the sound of city traffic inside my room. I aged, loam-colored, gnarled, breathlessly white around the temple, imagining the opening of windows. Outside, a rinsed liquid light, wrung from the afternoon, climbed aged buildings, and finally leapt in a toast to a moon and stars who had forgotten their cue and loitered in the wings. What a long twilight. Silence, that theater of unloved streets where people meet like phantoms. They speak, and quietness impales ribs of air like a hero's javelin. Or truth enters through an open window. The dusk song of cicada, an orchestra with notes like pitchfork or spade, try lifting the burden of an unspoken word. I think memories of noise shall fill the city air, and a night judge shall sing in my room. There shall be no vacuum. I We'll now go on to a painting done by a very, unknown, quite unknown. I mean, in the company of some of the painters whom I've written poems about their work. But then that's the thing, that's what ekphrastic poetry is all about. It doesn't matter whether it's a much known image or much celebrated image or not. Doesn't really matter. It's what touches a writer or a poet and brings about that poet, kind of. To quote Shakespeare, as he said, the fire at the flint shows not until it is struck. So it's two flint stones. Unless you strike them together, you don't get the spark. A flintstone is just a flintstone otherwise. So obviously something in Mark Hall's painting of Baz Rock, which is a piece of rocky outcrop in the middle of the ocean, northern Scotland. So it's a poem about that. The painting is just about a parlor. To the parlor window, you see the rock in the far distance, in the middle of the sea. So this is a poem called Baz Rock. And this is a poem I kind of dedicated to Adil Jasawala. Because at that time we were in conversation and I wrote the poem and I kind of called him early in the morning and I told him that Adil, there's something I've written, I dedicated it to you. So this is that poem. Sometimes in the wardrobe of an island, the painter can find no space for the sea. Sailboats can't be fitted in on the sea and must do with the corner of the mantelpiece. Sunlight, dreaming of the cold knotting of rivers, sketches the windowsill, dark as lead on the floor with a shaking hand. Everything is in attendance. The tablecloth like a fresh canvas, the china glittering, bleu de mer, blanc d'argent, sea and white rock that remembers all forgetfulnesses. But you wonder at this weight when the artist misplaces everything. Sea in a window, island on a pane, the cold in the sun, and the wane in morning, a wane of warmth. Wisdom to warm the fingers with before breakfast. On this cold fastness of Firth, where everything, sea, sun, and island loom, have found new habitat in wrong places of exact recollection. And before I go to the poem requested by Vasudha, which is on René Magritte's painting, illustration of the giraffe, hanged giraffe. It's a rather disturbing image, actually. So before I read that, this is another very powerful painting, of course, Mystery and Melancholy of a Street by Giorgio de Chirico. So this is the city, of course, happens to be my city, because anyone who reads the poem would kind of understand where I mean by the particular locale that I'm describing, which is the central part of the city. And anyone who has come ever to Calcutta once would remember it's, of course, near the Maidan, the central green little space before all the Chinese checker-like high rises, kind of completely engulf your attention. So that's still the little green lungs of a city, you might say. So it's called Mystery and Melancholy of a Street. Burnt by the sun, the ledger of rain descends like dust upon a city. An omnibus toots the empty street into alarm. Every particle of street runs from each other. Contrariety, like a quiet earthquake, moves the omnibus to a halt. Shadows grow deep in the sun. The apprehension of a crowd trembles like the reflection of waters on bright city walls. On the green, bare chest of the city, lying prone beneath rainless skies, dreaming of stars through showers, through the omnibus windows, centaurs emerge. A horse, visible from the omnibus, A whore torso imagined atop equine legs. Surely the hour of our lesson about death is nigh. Chiron, the mentor of heroes, snorts in the afternoon like city heat. Sunlight, on an omnibus, waits like the pause in a slow dance to the choiring of city quiet for the returning shadow of Achilles, who has strayed far today to find war. And now, of course, to the requested poem. This is an entire section which is called Matters Magritte. It's been very kindly translated, the entire section, by another Red River writer, people knows, Cécile Omani, into French for the surrealist, because of course Magritte was this great surrealist, for this great publication, this great magazine of surrealist art and poetry, Revue de la Poésie in Toto, which is of course edited by the famous Abdul Qadir al-Janabi. So they have translated in the number 7. So they have translated the entire section of Magritte poems, because he calls it Magritte's vacation, Le Vacances de Magritte, they call it. It is very interesting as an interpretation. So this is called About a Giraffe. When shadows lengthen, he casts no shadow, but the shadow of the wood and that of the news spread across a savanna, worried by its uncertain resolution of the game of shadow substance. Under the cumulus of a shadow, the stark plains of the sun looked up, a strange spectacle. A dead giraffe at the end of the news, catching the sun. Coroner, who is still taking his time pronouncing it a carrion. The birds hold their wings and breath. Dead by the fiat of light. Year-end harlequin, lifting the cowl of gloom among a listless citizenry. A giraffe, carcass held together, barely, by a stitch of light, stills the wind with its pantomime of motionlessness on the savannah. Oh no, not the savannah. This is the church. And the parishioner had let his mind run astray on Christmas Day. All back at church now. There's no dead giraffe here. Did you look up at the wall though? Thank you. Hope you like the reading. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. And I think that was a very, very exceptional round of reading. And I would now like to open up the forum to the audience if they have any observations, comments, anything to say about poetry in general, about these particular poems that have been read this evening, something that you would like to say for our poets. You're please welcome to comment. Anybody here? I think the evening has been so beautifully full of poetry. There's a kind of overwhelmingness to reading and listening to good poetry. And especially, I think, when poets read in their own voices, when they kind of pitch the poem, exactly in the air, they offer it that delicate poise and balance. It's magic. So thank you, all of you, for coming to the Hearth, for this wonderful conversation and chat that we had around the Hearth. Very, very grateful to our loving audience. Menka ma'am, thank you so much for joining us. Elvin, so many of them have also left us. And I think this recording will be there for all of us to cherish. I'll put it up on YouTube very soon. And all of those who have missed it will be able to listen to these lovely poems once again. So thank you very much. And I wish these beautiful 5 books a loving journey across the world. May you have many, many more readers and have a lovely, lovely interaction with other poets and other poems as these books travel. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, Dibyajyoti, without whom this session would not have happened. Yes, Shafiqul, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just a few words. Thank you so much, Vasudhara. It's nice to meet you, and you have wonderfully conducted the program. And also, I'm from another country, but it seems that we have been familiar for quite a long time. So already we have been so much in touch. So thank you, lovely poets, and we look forward to meeting again. And special thanks to Dipe, and he has done really a wonderful job. And special thanks to Alvin Ping as well. So he has been here throughout the whole program. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone.
Sadhbir ma'am has something to say. Yes, ma'am, please.
I want to congratulate all the poets. I really enjoyed their talk about this was very interesting the way you did it. First, you had them talk about the book, which is very important because it's a very good background in our minds when we read the poetry. And then they recited an assortment of their poems, the way they felt them, the way they wanted to get them across to us. So that was a amazing idea. Thank you so much for that. I want to congratulate all of them and wish their books a huge success. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being
Bye.
with us, and that means a lot because when we have, very patient with poetry, I think patience is very important. And when we have such patient listeners who are, because listening is a gift, and I think very few people are capable of offering that gift. So, as poets, we are very grateful for the gift that our fellow poets and this loving audience has brought to us. The Hearth remains very grateful and looks forward to another Guftagu very soon. So, thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you too. God bless you and God bless all of these friends
Everyone,
here.
take care.
Thank you so
So,
much. Thank
thank
you all.
you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Vasudha.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Vasudha.